Oh, gee, you don't know where I will take you.
Roland, I'll get in a car with you any day. You have no idea where you're going, but you know it's going to be somewhere awesome.
Yeah, I just tell you I need new glasses, but hey, that's your risk.
I'll drive with blind, Roland. It's all good.
Welcome to the What's Your Baseline podcast. In this show, we talk about our experiences and lessons learned in enterprise architecture and business process management. What's Your Baseline is designed to be for everyone. Newbies who are just getting started with these topics, organizations who want to improve their EA and BPM groups and the value they get from it, as well as practitioners who want to get a different perspective and care about the discipline.
Each episode will tackle different key topics, providing context, background, best practices, and stories from the road, inviting you to learn from our challenges and successes, and demonstrating key tools to help you set up your practice and get the most out of it.
I'm your host, Roland Wolt, and I'm joined today by my co-host, JM Erlinson.
Hey, JM, welcome to another episode. How are you doing today?
I am doing fine. You know, I've actually had a wonderful weekend away, a chance to reflect and look at nature. I forget that often when we're at the city. You know, it's full of these concrete buildings and it feels kind of constricting. But just a few minutes outside of town is nature, beautiful and bountiful, ready to enjoy. And right now it's covered in a blanket of whites, and I love it. I looked over a frozen lake. I woke up to the sounds of nothing, which is a change, and I'm ready and excited to record today's episode of What's Your Baseline. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, and as always, I have a special treat for you, which is the weather forecast from Prague in the Czech Republic. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah, today we have a special friend on the show named Jakub Dvořák, who is also, and we're going to talk about that, a co-host of his own podcast. So, hello, Jakub. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hi, Roland. Hi, JM. And let me just say that I really loved your intro, which sounded like in a fairy tale, you know, describing how much snow you have and how lovely it looks out there. Let me assure you that in Prague, I don't think I've seen sun for the past 2 months. So I do envy you a bit.
Oh, no. Well, you got to get the light as it comes, right? You know, if your sun is only up for a few hours a day, that's the time you got to go. That's why I feel like working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is such a weird phenomenon. It means you're giving away the most beautiful parts of the day to your profession. Whereas, I mean, I'm happy to work at night. I'd rather work at night. There's not as much to see.
I'm with you on that, but on the other hand, and we're going to talk about it, Jakub, your co-host obviously did the better decision, you know, moving to the United States, because we have clear blue sky, even though it's freezing cold outside. So you missed out, man.
Yeah, I think he brought the bad weather with him though, because he just texted me the other week, basically with his weather forecast. And in Austin, where he moved to, was like this crazy storm and snow everywhere, which is very unlike Austin. So I think the European vibes are with him.
Well, it will change for sure. But hey, Jakub, let's get started with the interview. Maybe you give our listeners a little intro, who you are and what you're doing, and what brought you to our show here.
Well, I think, Roland, you brought me to your show, and I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
However, not to digress too much, I am in process mining. I am a team lead of a company in process end. I work from Prague, as you mentioned, where I lead a little team of data scientists. And on the side, I'm also, recording a podcast dedicated to process mining, which I enjoy very, very much with my co-host, Patrick Bogner. So that's a little bit about myself. I've been in the field for the last 4 years, so I'm still pretty much a newbie who is just learning his ways around and, trying to learn from guys like you.
Well, we're excited to both have you as a conversation partner and also to learn from some of your experiences. So tell me a little bit more about your past. What got you to process and how did you get to this story of process mining as a core part of your offering as a professional endeavor?
Yeah, I would say persistence, because right after I finished my studies, so this is basically my first full-time job, I studied in Czech Republic. I studied robotics and cybernetics, later on smart buildings. worked in Siemens in building technologies department, which was pretty cool. I was literally working in boiler room and reading meters and temperature and everything. And then suddenly I moved to Germany and I was just applying for any data related job. And I counted it because I'm a very organized person, and I got 80 rejections before I actually landed a job in Process End. And I must say I'm happy ever since.
Is that normal for Germany to have a lot of difficulty finding a position, particularly like an entry-level one?
I wouldn't say so. It is difficult for a non-German though, especially coming with, let's say, limited level or limited knowledge of German. So there, I think, was the major hiccup.
But Jakub, German is easy. Even little kids learn it.
Yeah, that's what they've been telling me since like second grade.
Here's a question for you, Roland. You've worked in the US, you've worked in Germany, you've had to apply for jobs in both. Tell me about your comparison and experience between getting a job in the US versus getting a job in Germany.
I think it's easier for me because I came in with the daughter company of a German firm, and I was already classified as what they called an international manager. So the whole bureaucratic stuff was significantly easier. The firm spent a little bit more on the visa, which was an e-visa, an investor visa, and not the H-1B one that you typically see and whatnot. What's difficult and painful still is getting all the other stuff done, getting your green card and all those things, which are obviously independent of the firm, even though they need to sponsor you for this. But I'm happy to report that I'm past that milestone for a couple of years now. So I'm looking forward to becoming naturalized at some point in time and don't have to worry about this.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, yeah, Jakub, I want to talk to you a little bit more about things outside of work, because I know our listeners love to hear about the guests and kind of the whole person. What are your interests as a person? We always ask people about bucket list items. What if you could have, time off from work or be retired or achieve your dreams? What would they be? What would you want to do as a high point of your life?
That's a very good question. And, James, I'm in this phase of my life where I really enjoy what I'm doing on an ongoing daily basis, so including my work. But I also have a personal project that I work on during the weekends. It revolves around personal finance. So you know how it is, budget, investing, personal development and all of that. And I've created this very interesting platform in Czech Republic, and it's getting a lot of traction. It's ranking about best business podcasts and everything. So It's like my little baby that I've been growing on a side of doing this day job. And it's really awesome. I'm actually now in the process of writing a book, and I'm going to by the time this episodes air, I will know whether it's going to be published or not, because there are some some interesting developments over that. So cool stuff. So I guess my top item on the bucket list will really be finalizing the book and having it out in the world.
Well, the interesting question is, will it be in English or in Czech?
In Czech, I'm afraid.
Well, if it gets big enough, they'll translate it into 100 languages, and you'll find it all over the world, and you'll have to go on a big author tour, and you can be signing all your books, and we'll be riding your coattails as, hey, we once knew this guy.
Yeah, I wish. I mean, the competition in US market or in English speaking market is just through the roof. So I'm just going to stick on my little yard here in Czech Republic, where there is not even as many competitors as
that makes sense.
Elsewhere.
That makes sense. But hey, let's talk a little bit about the firm that you're working. You mentioned that you're working in a company called Process End, so the ampersand at the end of the name. Who or what is Process End?
So Process End, we are a German consulting company founded in Munich by what used to be Celonis employees. You probably heard of Celonis, which is a process mining vendor, one of the top on the market. And essentially what the idea behind founding our firm was that, guys, there is so much business going on. Nobody's really focused on consulting services, on implementing the software. So they just really started their own company. Then soon thereafter, another ex-employee of Celonis joined. So there were a trio basically. And they started getting some interesting customers, because back then the base was pretty small, and they had also, they knew the bosses because, back in 2014, 15, 16, Celonis wasn't the hegemon, the juggernaut that we know today. It was only a couple of hundred people, probably even less back then. And they really started rolling out these consulting services. And soon later after, basically, I joined as well as a second full-time employee, and I've been enjoying this ride ever since.
So tell me a little bit more about what kind of services that Process and offers. And I mean, from your personal perspective, because this is what we're going to be really getting into the meat of in the conversation today, why is it important that you pair services alongside the technology implementation of process mining?
So I already mentioned process mining a couple of times. So our core business is still in process mining and helping organization to essentially set out on this journey, help them with the first baby steps when, they have no process mining, to get them into the point where they already have the tool and they can start harvesting the insights from it. So that's still our base. We do also kind of the BI consulting, because it's very close once you start playing with the processes to build up a BI tool or a BI KPI measurements and so on. Also on the site, we have this platform we call Lantix, which is our product, and we are slowly rolling it out, where we really want to serve the data science community with management of the knowledge of all the queries and everything that they have. So that's essentially what we do. But our core business as a process end, we still do the process mining consulting.
So then as a follow-up to that, actually, I want to get into the specifics here for our listeners who, they could come from a variety of different backgrounds. Why do you need the services alongside the technology? Why can't most companies you talk to do it in-house? So what's your pitch?
Well, that's a good question. So luckily I don't do the pitches very much.
But you believe in some of the philosophies that lead to the sales, approach, correct?
Yeah. I mean, if I did the pitch, I would probably mention that just because you know your processes or how they work or anything doesn't mean that you know how to implement them. And it's categorized into these two buckets. One is the domain knowledge of the process. So you need to know your system, your ERP system. We are mostly focused on SAP implementations, the processes such as purchasing or accounts payable and so on. So you gotta know what's behind that. But it's not enough, because you also got to have the knowledge of what you are actually doing on the background in the so-called data science job, where you are developing the queries and basically feeding these data models with data. And that's where the uniqueness of our position of our company as well comes in, because we know very well the tool, very well know the capabilities of the tool and what you can do with it, and speed up the process of implementation quite significantly. And we also have the domain knowledge, because we've implemented over the years so many processes that we know a lot of them pretty much thoroughly. And we can just jump in and say, okay, guys, if you are implementing purchase to pay, you would probably spend half a year before you get even decent results. We can do this in 3 weeks.
That's great. But now, obviously, my question is, how large is your firm? And you mentioned in the pre-call that you're just expanding to the United States, which is obviously a larger market. But if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Of course, Ron. So when I started, we were basically 5 people, and the business was tough, because we always have to position ourselves as this cool consulting company. And you can imagine that some of the companies were a little... there was a lack of trust, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
However, I must say that we somehow managed, don't know how, looking back, but we grew into what we are now, 41 people. I counted it today, with 16 nationalities in the company, which is amazing. So very cool environment to work with. And we mostly still operate on the European market with our headquarters in Munich. I am now actually in charge of the Czech market, or Czech office, where we are growing our team. But where we are looking in the future is definitely US. And my colleague and co-host of our show on process mining, Patrick, is actually leading the charge in Austin, Texas, where as of now we also already have a team of data scientists and looking to grow, because from process mining perspective, it seems that the US market is just about to start.
That sounds good. So when you talk about process mining services, and I think it's interesting when you're a small organization, like you mentioned, and trying to grow, I suspect you're going to have to focus a little bit more on domain specific or technology specific knowledge, because that's really an easy thing to dig into. We had a while ago on our show, Zach Bennett from VEA, who talked a little bit about technology specialization as one of the great entry points. But as you're growing, what are you thinking about? What are you seeing as a division between the kind of services you offer between technical services, so the support to platforms and the technology implementation, versus strategic and consulting services? So how do I get value from it? Where does it fit into my organization's strategic goals? How should I evangelize? It's like these sort of more traditional management consulting techniques. What do you see the division of labor being in what clients are asking for and what you're trying to build?
Right. So from that limited experience I have, which is about 4 years now, I see the big shift from, being this platform expert, being the expert on process mining. And it's, kind of shifting to this execution ecosystem. So basically to do as you mentioned, the changes, the operational management and so on, which is interesting for us also as a company, because we have the knowledge of the tool, we have the knowledge of the domain, but we weren't really born or weren't really working as a consultant. So this is something that we are also now working on, because companies, of course, want to make some actionable changes based on the findings that they get from the process mining. And it's interesting to see also us, developing with them, with the companies that we work with our customers, slowly shifting to this perspective of being actually a proper consulting company that can not only implement the software and help them with some basic value creation, but also focusing on the bigger picture, on the business process management as a whole, and maybe also on the change management and so on.
Yeah, which is obviously very interesting for us with the scope of our podcast here. But speaking of which, the companies that you work with, why are your clients pushing for this new technology, this new approach of process mining? And how does that fit into their technical ecosystem? Is it mainstream? Is it emerging? Or how would you classify process mining in the markets that you serve?
Roland, I really loved when you called process mining being a hipster child of the business process management. I really gonna quote you on that a lot, so thank you for that. If anybody asks, it's my idea. But just having this limited knowledge, I can't really answer the full question, because I haven't been around business process management. And when I even started the job, I didn't even know that there was a business process management area as a knowledge domain or anything. I had a hard time grasping process mining as it was. And now, it seems to me that the companies are jumping on a train of process mining a bit from a peer pressure, because a lot of companies are doing it. You can hear these interesting stories how company A saved X million of dollars by just optimizing their process and automating their issues away. And it's also this badge of honor when you do something that's still considered to be revolutionary and cool, and process mining definitely checks this area still. And so companies really want to jump on this and actually see whether they can leverage this technology for their own use as well.
So it's like investigative right now in some capacity. They're like kind of going with the hot stuff, but they're still feeling out exactly what it fits into.
Yes, JM. I just spoke on a conference last week, and I gave a talk, as you know, about process mining and how it fits into the bigger picture. And within the room, there were about 40, 50 people. And I started the conversation with, hey, let's do a little show of hands. Who of you are doing process mining? And 0 hands went up. And,
oh boy.
And then I said, okay, how many of you are planning to do process mining? And about a quarter of the hands went up. So wow. I think it's still pretty new, even though obviously for those of us who work with this on a daily basis, it's kind of normal, kind of boring, but I still think it's very new.
And Jakub, from the experience you've had, that leads me to the question of resistance. Like, what resistance are you getting or hearing or seeing? Like, what are blockers in projects you're working on saying to their colleagues or even to your face?
So we are lucky in a meaning that when we are entering the discussion with the customer, they already kind of are bought into the idea and want to do process mining, because we are not the vendor. We are not trying to persuade them that process mining is the thing that they should be doing. This is usually handled by the vendor that we work for. And we enter the discussion when they already said, okay, let's do this. That doesn't mean that it's seamless and that we just go there and everybody's super bought into it. And there are a couple of layers that are important for the foundation of a successful project, and it comes all the way from the top to the bottom. So at least from what I've seen, having on board the management and the C-level and whatever you might imagine being involved in such projects is usually easy, because those are the innovative people that want to push some changes, that want to improve the organization. The problems sometimes come in the middle management that is leading the project, and you have to get them on your side. So these are the people that you talk most with, because they are responsible for the execution of the project, and you are in ongoing discussion with what you've been doing, how you evaluate the success and everything. But it doesn't end there, because obviously they also have their subordinates, and those are the people that eventually are going to use the tool, and getting them excited about it, basically establishing that this is not just another BI tool, but it actually possesses so much more than just reporting and KPIs. It's really tough. And I'm not going to say that, every time you're successful with that, because some companies are more welcoming of the change than the others. It depends also. Yeah. I mean, you probably know that from your own experience, that sometimes you just think, oh, wow, this was so easy. Everybody was so cooperative.
It's less and less though.
Yeah. I mean, I had both type of customers really when everything just, I had this project recently when I think it was the first time in 4 years when everything went according to plan, and we delivered on time, like on the day that we said that it's going to be done, it was done.
Well, that's the other question about expectations, because I feel like there's some interesting conversations happening here about people who've bought into it. But when they bought into it, what did they buy? What was a promise that they bought? And as a result, how are you having to deliver things? So tell me about that, and who's using these insights? What are they doing with them? What value are they achieving from them? So that when they check back and say, yeah, you did your job. Well, what was the job we did?
Yeah, I mean, for us, usually the job is, here's your tool, use it now. I mean, there are a couple of reasons why companies are doing it. Some of the more mature companies that they just want to see their processes. And I've been involved in the projects when we integrated like dozens of ERP systems, and it was for the first time when the company had actually centralized their view on the processes, not only like from KPI perspective and some measurements and so on, but also from the process perspective. And this is just amazing, because then suddenly they see, okay, so this is how our process looks like. So I guess the process discovery is big, and a lot of companies are in this phase when they just want to see their process for the first time. So it's pretty interesting. Then obviously other things such as conformance, because you have different divisions, different departments that are doing process mining. So for instance, we also have controlling teams that actually want to make sure that what their other employees are doing is correct. And the last point that organizations are interested in doing that is actually the enhancements and the improvements. So they kind of know their processes, they kind of know their pinpoints, they know what they want to improve and what they want to focus on, but they need more guidance. They want to be absolutely certain that this is what they need, and this is how can they actually go about solving their problem. And this is where process mining is very strong and very interesting, because they can actually look at a very small subpart of the process and start really digging into that.
So does that mean, from your perspective, that the project has ended once you've set up the tool, or are you also involved in then the changes, the implementation that comes afterwards? So think about the role that an SI typically would play then, or is your value prop ended once they have the tool and they look at it and say, oh yeah, we found something?
We need to stay competitive. We need to look at the value creation as well. So we also shift our projects a bit in a way that we don't just say, let's implement everything, because, we got burned doing that sometime in the past.
Oh boy.
So we rather say, okay, let's rather focus on these 2 or 3 use cases that you say are your highest priority. And let's leave some time at the end of the project. Let's put some numbers on them. Let's put some saving potential for them. And then let's think about how can we solve the problem. And then you open up a different path that you could take. And when I was thinking about it, I thought that there are basically 3 paths. One is the people path. So basically influencing what people are doing and the way that they are doing it. You have the clear data. You can just go to your subordinates, tell them, look, this is not the way you should be doing it, or call your vendor, call your customer, and just improve it. The second thing would be the process path. This is already somehow, let's say, a little the system related, also IT related, when you basically make changes in the process. We are not specialized in doing that yet. I mean, we have some knowledge of things. We can pinpoint the problem in the master data or so, but the customer needs to do them themselves. We don't really support them in these problems. And then the third part, which we can already use, is the IT path. And that's basically when our knowledge of the tool, and we mostly work with Celonis as a process mining vendor, that's when our IT knowledge really comes in handy, because we know what the tool is capable of. And it's really invested a lot in automations, alertings, but also there is this integrated machine learning workbench. And I can already tell that at least when we are using it, it's not just a buzzword, and that we have some interesting use cases where we actually used an actual machine learning thing to produce some results.
That's awesome.
Well, just to have it said, because we're obviously an equal opportunity podcast here, there are obviously other process mining vendors out there who are on par with those features. And obviously you, dear listeners, have a choice in choosing your tools. But to come back, we mentioned it earlier, you're running your own podcast called Mining Your Business. Shameless pitch, guys. Listen to them. Patrick and Jakub do a very good job here.
Yeah.
But one thing that I noticed following you for quite a while now and listened to the episodes is that you had that epiphany that there's more than process mining, that there's that whole discipline around BPM. And I enjoy those episodes when you bring in old farts like us. But the one thing that I noticed is that there's also something like a renaissance of process management for young people, which I think is super positive. Jakub, do you see that too? Or what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, 100%. So what I think young people really want, especially when they are looking for their first job or first career opportunities, is make an actual difference. So the data and any job related to data was like the hottest job over the last couple of years. If you look up data scientist, data analyst, or any hard skills that you use for manipulation of data, be it Python, SQL, R, you would see a huge spike in positions like that. And the great thing about working in process mining, and especially being a consultant such as our company, is that you can actually take the data and do essentially whatever you want with them, because you have an access to them. You have the opportunity to pinpoint problems. And also you have the tools in your hands to actually fix them. And I'll give you one example. So I mentioned that we use this machine learning workbench for one of our use cases when we are basically checking duplicate payments. And because we can consolidate the data from different ERP systems into one environment, which for most companies was unthinkable just a couple of years ago, we can run our checks on a lot of different data from a lot of different systems. And I just had this demo a week ago when one of our customers wanted to see that. So we implemented it. And just during the demonstration, we found a duplicated invoice that wasn't caught by their system because there were some just different characters that the system didn't catch. And we found and stopped an actual saving of 60,000 euros, which was, for me, just at that moment, was pretty cool.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I guess the young people really look for opportunities like this, that they can leverage the knowledge that they were taught at school and go to real world and make a difference.
And I actually have a story about that, specifically about the young people making the difference. I have a really good friend, very close friend, wonderful human being, who has a PhD in engineering, biomedical engineering. And he found something for both employability and for drive to make a big difference, as much as doing biomedical research, was actually turning that into data science. And so he went back and got a certificate in data science, and he became a fellow at a data science institute as a career move as a 30-year-old man, and that was a huge positive shift for his career and has landed him where he wants to be. And it's funny that was where he saw the opportunity to do the most good, to use data and to have that as his scalpel to make a real difference to the business space. And I think that's really cool, taking that sort of approach. And the question is, where are those people getting that information? Because I feel like right now, I know that data science does exist in some places as a degree, but I feel like we talked with a few of our different guests how a lot of these sort of skills come from on the job. Can you tell me about what you're seeing, and particularly when you're looking at hiring up a team, as you are in the Czech Republic, where are you seeing these skills come from? Are you looking for people who've had to do it in industry, or are you now seeing this explosion of programs that promise what the skills are that you need?
I love this question because, yes, I am involved in the hiring process, and we did a little bit of A/B testing, checking what's going to rank best, how many candidates each job offer is going to give you. I can tell you that when you write process mining architect, you're going to get 0 replies because nobody still knows what process mining is, especially when you get out of our shell of, our little community. Process mining, Roland, you said it yourself, is still, unless you work in the field, very much unknown. What is not so unknown is the position of a data scientist or data analyst. But behind these things, a lot of different things can hide. So then it really comes to the point where you really need to explain that, think what's behind that. And maybe coming back to the question, what universities, and I've also noticed this when looking up the new candidates, what they offer is to give them a little bit of insight into everything. So they get these hard skills, they get the first experience with working with larger data sets. And that's essentially all we need, because no school, or at least no school that I know of, will teach you how ERP system works, or God know how SAP knows, and not even I know that after 4 years of working. So this is something that we basically teach them, but we need our data scientists to at least possess this general, I would say, IT affinity, so that they are able to work with the data. They know what the data structures are and can write some basic coding to work with it.
Yeah, that makes sense, Jakub. Absolutely. And I think it's also a good thing, because it means it's opportunity for growing forward. When you have people who learn about these tools, about these techniques, about these approaches, and then think, hey, I can implement that in my organization, which is obviously good for everyone who's involved in the currently smaller ecosystem of this, and the pie will just grow. But to give you some time to reflect on this, our dear listeners, we're going to play a little bit of music, as always, after a segment. But before we go, I'd like to think about how process mining might fit into your organization, and how you can use process mining's insights to improve your current situations. We will have wonderful music from Jeremy Volz again, and we'll see each other in a few seconds.
Lately I've been feeling like I'm needing a change. Take me up into the sky. I swear I can fly. I'll try. Yes, I'll try. I'll try.
All right, folks, thanks so much for listening to this wonderful music and taking a second to think about how you and process mining might become best friends. But talking about good friends and making good friends, let's go back to Jakub, because Jakub, I know that you work on a lot of process mining projects. And I'd love to get sort of 2 layers of discussion here. Number one, I'd love to know, how do those work? Go through the different phases of a project that process mining would sort of be the centerpiece of. And the second layer is, where does this fit into an organization? And how do these projects get slotted into your typical project delivery lifecycle? Are they part of large-scale initiatives, or are they just one-off? So let's start with the breakdown and then talk about context.
Yeah. So what I like to say is that a lot of companies, they are expecting process mining to be this out-of-the-box solution that you just basically plug and play some transformations, extract the data in like within a couple of hours, and you just do process mining and save $10 million. It's not like that.
It's a self-driving car, right? Process mining, that's how it works?
Yeah. You just don't need to know anything.
Just to tell a little side story, I had a client who said, we want to have a look at the procure to pay, order to cash process, and we're using Oracle. And I said, hey, that's great. Then you obviously just had the implementation, where it is, and they said, no, we don't know how it is customized. We're looking at the vendor to help us with figuring that out. As if we would have, obviously, Oracle experts piled up like crazy.
Yeah, so we have experts on your business. Like, we know how your Oracle works. Like, no, we don't. And you don't either? That feels a little rough. So it's not plug and play. You're saying that you have to bring people together with technology. So tell me how that breaks down into phases of a project, and where do you introduce different components?
Yeah. So I guess for us, when we get the process mining project and we have a brand new customer who wants to do process mining, for us, it always starts with what we call a kickoff. This is the moment where we generally find out what the customer wants. It's important because, we don't know what kind of processes they want to look into. We don't know what kind of database we are talking about or what kind of source of the data we are talking about. If there are some external system and so on, the security layers and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of things that you need to ask at the beginning. And from kickoff to actually starting with the implementation, a long months can pass, because you can imagine that some large organizations, they won't just let you extract their data, their financial data from their system and just do process mining on them. You have to go through a lot of approvals and security checks. And I've been on a project where it took 6 months from the moment that they, bought the license and wanted to do the process mining until we were actually able to connect to their system, because the pipeline there from the minute that you knew that you need the data until you actually were able to acquire it was insane.
And they'll say, well, why is it taking so long for you to run things? And it's like, well, listen, you put these protections in place, and with good reason. Yeah. But as a result, when we need to pull this information that you've protected so carefully, you're going to have to pay a little bit in time to comply with your own regulations. And you don't want to try and go around those, because now you're implying that process isn't important.
Exactly.
So now you've gone from kickoff to the first moment of the project. Tell me a little bit about how that starts when you've got the data set. Chef's kiss.
So we learned that we should postpone every other interaction with the company until the moment we have the data, because we don't want to learn what the users want to mine and then wait 6 months before we can actually do anything. I can tell you right now that you lose all the attention.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't want to do that, right? So you want to make sure that you have the data. And when you do, you need to go to talk to the business. So as I said, process mining is not anymore just about let's show purchase to pay and we're done. We need to focus on what the customer wants. And luckily they are more and more educated, so they kind of know what they're jumping into. They saw all of these value creation workshops. They know what other customers are doing, so they kind of have an idea. So for us, it's important to listen and to ask them, why is it that they want to do this specific thing? What would they consider to be a success? How they want to measure it? And, get all the necessary information for us to build them a reporting tool or reporting system so that they can get the information from that. So we really have this, we call it a scoping workshop, where we get all the definitions, and then we, just go code. This is the moment where actually most of the heavy lifting happens. This is where we have the data. We build our transformation. We build our activities in the process. If we have some external system like, scanning for invoices and so on, we build it in. And we usually take 2 to 3 weeks before we go back to the customer, and we do this like a handover workshop when we show them their process and we walk them through it, let them ask all the questions and like give the tool to them. However, it cannot stop there because, when you see process mining for the first time, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I love this because I usually I show them how you can crop the process and look into different variations. And they're like, okay, could you do this again? Where do I click? So this is usually when the fun part happens, and you cannot really leave them hanging from there on. So
I have 2 questions on that, Jakub, because I've seen that in the past. The first one is the question, well, I don't believe you what I'm seeing here. I think it's, you made it up. It's not my data, So how do you encounter these type of questions?
I say that I always want to, I want them to prove me wrong. So if they say that it's not true, let's just pick a random example. Let's pick one invoice and let's take a look at that into their system. They're saying it's not possible that it has been open for 6 months. I say, okay, let's take a look. Here's the number. Take it. Look, go to your SAP. Take a look at that. And they're like, oh my God, you are really right. It has been open for 6 months. How is it possible? Well, I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think it's a point worth mentioning, that obviously within a successful project, you have to make sure that you convince your client that your data is right, because otherwise I think you just fail from the beginning. But the second part of my question is, well, when you go in there, assuming you have a very immature client, do you have some standard analysis types that you bring to the table? Things that you always do at the beginning of a project, things you always look for? And if so, would you mind to share those?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the easiest ones are the changes. So when you are looking into any process, you usually the good practice is to have it automated as possible, and seeing manual touches in the process is usually one thing that everybody begins with, because you can identify these changes. You can say how long it took, what kind of impact did it have, how many cases, how many items in your process were affected by this change, and very easily put a number on that. So you can say, okay, if somebody takes 5 minutes for each of this change and you have 100,000 of them, how much time would you actually save? And eventually, how much money would you save if you didn't have this change, or if you just reduce it by 50%? So that's one. Automation, another big use case. You want to show them how well automated their process is and what kind of impact would it have been more automated. And then cycle times. So how long does it take from for your case, for your process mining ID to get from point A to point B? And if it's too long, for what vendor, for why, where is it being, where does it take so long, and why is this the case? So these are, I would say, 3 major ones that are easily demonstrable or easily demonstrating the power of process mining.
Yeah, here's a question for you about time, because one of the things I haven't heard you say is cost. I know time turns into cost specifically, but how do you quantify the dollars? Or do you quantify the dollars, or do you actually get the customer to quantify the dollars from their business domain expertise and knowledge?
So we do this in the last phase. So after we give the data to them and hand over them the dashboards, and we go into this like a feedback loop with them where we try to get them feedback on everything. We usually take a couple of weeks. And at the end of this process, we do the value creation workshop. And that's exactly where we are trying to put an actual numbers, an actual dollars on the findings that we make basically between the handover and until we meet again for the value creation. I generally don't like putting numbers or putting the dollars on anything, because it's just so easy and very often so wrong to just say, okay, if I save this, it will save me $5 per case, and times 100,000, you will save $500,000. Then everybody just gets excited and let's save $500,000. And then you find out, okay, but it's actually not a problem. And, we can't save $500,000 because it actually costs us only 20 cents.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of things that go with it. When you think about cost savings, you could say, oh, look, you're having 3 different systems here. Wouldn't it be great if you could retire 2 of the 3?
Yeah.
And you have no clue if those other 2 systems are mission critical in a completely different process, and you're actually just talking nonsense. What I was thinking, Jakub, when I was listening to what you're just saying, was if I had to write a statement of work, I understand we have the 4 phases of the kickoff, of getting the data, doing the replay to the clients, and then have the value creation workshop. But how many iterations do you have in your project approaches? Because from my perspective, the clients I've worked with, and maybe I had the wrong ones, I don't know, they were always asking for more. Oh, can we do this? Can we do this? And all that stuff. So how do you get a handle on this, that you don't have a project, even though it might be interesting to see where they're going, that the project doesn't get the scope creep to nirvana?
Yeah. I guess that's hitting the sweet spot, really, when the customer is left at the end of the project and they are just craving for more, because suddenly they see, we can do so much with this if only we knew how to do it ourselves. I wonder what company could help us. What about the guy that actually implemented it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say that a lot of our customers stay with us long term. So for us, it's not usually one and done, and we do like to support them not only on the processes we've built, already going more into the depth into some use cases, because I love to say that process mining is never done, because you could always implement something more or enhance something more, catch some bugs, look into the bigger details and so on. But you can also start with new processes, because there's just so many business processes that you could be doing.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that you're building up the longer-term relationship with your clients, because I think that is one of the true success factors in consulting, if you have that relationship with your clients. But speaking of clients, so what should clients expect when working with you? And maybe more importantly, what should they prepare before you put foot into their building and start working with them?
Well, I would say get ready for having to work, because we will bring a lot of work for you. It's not that we do the implementation, we pinpoint the problems, we help them with value creation, but as long as the customer doesn't act on the findings, nothing gets done, and they need to establish. I would say, I like to say, we call it center of excellence. They need to establish or point some people who would be responsible for looking into the use cases and getting the value out of them. Because if we are missing this dynamo, this person who's driving the initiative, it's very likely to fall or to be forgotten at some point. So,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I would just say, if you're going to do process mining, be prepared that it's going to be a long-term commitment.
And that leads me to a follow-on question in general, though, because I think that you've had a chance in even just the 4 years you've been working on this to see a bunch of different client circumstances, and also to see technology evolve and develop. And we want to get some lessons learned and insight for people who are looking to get into this, or even companies who are struggling to figure out whether or not they should talk process mining, should get into projects. What are your lessons learned from entering this marketplace, and what are your most successful and challenging engagement? Like, what are the things you see that are in common about them? So help prepare companies, prepare people, their expectations with some of your best tips and tricks.
Yeah, that's also a good question. I would say if you are interested in lessons learned, just go listen to our podcast, Minding Your Business. We have a whole episode on that. Yeah, there are a couple of them. And I realize it the longer I work in the field, the more I realize it. And that's actually listening to what the customer wants. It's for me as an engineer, it's very easy to just forget it or just do my thing and just leave off because I know how it should be done. But, when you are starting to feel more like a consultant, you have to understand what the customer wants. And just because you're going to build something you think is amazing and cool doesn't mean that that it's actually what the customer wants. So understanding their needs and trying to help fix their problems, whatever the problem might be.
And so if you're looking to get into this career, let's say you're a student, maybe you're in high school or even early in university, what sorts of experiences should you seek out? And think about somebody at the very beginning of their career. What kind of jobs should you get that will lead you down this path that would let you join something like Process and you in this career path?
So as I said, we also in our hiring, we don't necessarily look for the experts. We actually like people who are just fresh out of the school, who have some experience with the data, worked on a diploma thesis or something that's somehow data related, where they had to process large amounts of data and had some output out of that. So we do like these candidates. So if you want to work as a data scientist, I would say start with that. Try out the different projects, there are so many online courses that focus only on data processing and data analytics. Do some of these, see whether it's something that you like, and then just apply.
And once you're hired, and obviously you've done some projects, where do you see the growth path for those candidates? Because question. Obviously you're working in a consulting organization. It's not academia anymore. So what would be a perspective that somebody would have who starts today at Jakub's team at Process End?
I would say that you can essentially take at least two paths that come to my head. You can become a domain expert when you really know the backbone of the ERP system, be it SAP, be it Salesforce, be it Oracle, something that you do the data mining on. That's one thing, and that inevitably comes should you work on these projects, because you need to understand how the relationship works and so on. But then you starting to develop this feeling for the processes. So after you build a couple of processes, you know what kind of problems the customer have. And this is the fun part, because it just opens up you to so many new things that you could be doing, because you start having answers for these questions. You know the tool, you know the domain, and you can develop very interesting technical things to actually address these issues. And as I said, we started to using some pretty advanced machine learning algorithms to answer some of the questions that our customer have. And there is just still so many things that we could be doing with that. So one thing is definitely becoming the IT expert. And then there's the second path, which I personally took and which I really enjoy. And that's more of the consulting thing, where you talk to the people, you lead the projects, and you are really I call it a people person, when you are helping your IT team to grow and to, be able to translate what the business wants. But you are also talking to all these business people and learning about their issues and trying to find a solution that could work for them.
Yeah, and I've noticed that not only in your podcast, but obviously in others, and obviously in our daily work. Once you've been into that process field for quite some time, it's not the technology. It's the people who are the problem, quote unquote, right? And how to deal with it. And I find it so funny listening to other podcasts who say, oh, we're the technical podcast. And after 5 minutes, they start talk about people and their interactions with them. Because at the end of the day, that's what I typically say. It doesn't matter how many wallpapers, your process models you put on the wall and how many black boxes you have in the basement. If the person behind the screen doesn't want to do the work, they won't.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to the end of this segment. And Jakub, it's been incredible so far. We're going to have a little bit of a conclusion after this, but we wanted to leave people with a little bit of music and a question or a couple of questions to take you away in your thought time. So first and foremost, think about what you're doing right now, whether or not you're a student, early in your career, mid or late in your career. What are you working on right now? And how does that touch on data, large data sets, and the extrapolation to process? Could mining be for you? And if it is, when do you think you're ready to start that conversation as a topic for your thesis, for your project, for your career, and as part of a lifestyle? We'll leave you for a few moments to think about these things, and we'll come back with our conclusions and the end of the episode.
Welcome back. So, very nice conversation with you, Jakub, and it was great talking about your experience, your firm that you're working in, and the interesting things that you do, and obviously all the benefits and approaches that you bring to process mining and process analysis using that modern technology. But the question that is obviously on everybody's mind is, now that they've heard you, well, Jakub, how could people reach you?
So, the usual suspects. I'm on LinkedIn, and I assume that I will be tagged under your What's Your Baseline beautiful website.
For sure.
Yeah, with all the information about what I do in my free time and how I can dunk the basketball and everything, right? So I'm on LinkedIn, Jakub Dvořák. We have our podcast, so you can find it either on the LinkedIn as well. It's called Mining Your Business, or we have a website, miningyourbusiness.com. Well, I kind of forgot it. I think it's miningyourbusiness.com. I hope it's right. I don't know whether there's a podcast.
We will put the proper link in the show notes. No worries about that.
I always keep forgetting. And you can also find, if you're interested in what we are doing as a company. So we obviously have a corporate website, processand.com. So you can find us there and leave us a message.
Well, thank you so much, Jakub. This has been a really great conversation and a great delve into everything that is process mining and the consulting that makes it happen. Now, speaking of making it happen, all of our wonderful listeners out there, you make it happen every week by liking, subscribing, sharing, and joining us on these amazing conversations. And of course, you can find out lots more about this and a ton more at whatsyourbaseline.com, or for this episode specifically, including the transcript and show notes at whatsyourbaseline.com/episode 21. Well, folks, until next time, I've been J.M. Erlinson.
And I've been Jakub Dvořák.
And I'm Roland Wolt.
And we'll see you in the next one.